I stood at the entrance of our family dining room, my hand gripping the doorframe for support. 20 pairs of eyes turned to me in shocked conversations, halting mid-sentence. My mother's wine glass slipped from her fingers, shattering against the hardwood floor. "Ashlie," my aunt whispered, as if seeing a ghost. In a way, she was. According to my parents, I had run away a month ago, after a heated argument. But the truth, my brother Trevor had hit me with his car and left me for dead. While I fought for my life in a hospital bed, my parents told everyone I had disappeared. "You're pathetic," my mother had hissed at me that night. Those were the last words I heard before the impact, and I remembered everything. Growing up in our sprawling colonial home in Westbrook, Pennsylvania, had always been a study in conditional love. From the outside, we were the picture-perfect American family. My father, Richard, was a successful investment banker. My mother, Laura, ran the most prestigious interior design firm in the county, and our family portraits showed two beaming parents with their children, Trevor and Ashlie. What those portraits didn't show was how different life was for each of us children. Trevor, 2 years, my senior, had been the golden child since birth. He received praise for mediocre accomplishments while I worked twice as hard for a fraction of the recognition. When Trevor made the baseball team, after 3 attempts, my parents threw a backyard barbecue. When I became valedictorian, they complained about having to sit through a long graduation ceremony. "We just expect more from you, Ashlie," my mother would say whenever I pointed out the disparity. "Trevor needs more encouragement. He's sensitive." Sensitive wasn't the word I would have chosen. Entitled and reckless seemed more accurate. Throughout high school, Trevor crashed 2 cars, failed most of his classes, and still got rewarded with a brand new Audi for his 18th birthday. Meanwhile, I saved up for 3 years, working part-time at the local library to buy my used Honda Civic. My relationship with my mother was particularly strained. Laura Collins had specific ideas about what her daughter should be, and I never quite measured up. I wasn't interested in fashion or interior design like her. I preferred psychology books to shopping trips, jeans to dresses, and direct conversation to the passive-aggressive communication style she had perfected. "Stand up straight, Ashlie," she'd hiss at social gatherings. "Smile more. Why can't you make an effort?" Each criticism delivered with a tight smile so others wouldn't notice. My father was no better. Rather than defend me, he enabled my mother's behavior with his silence. He buried himself in work, emerging only to side with my mother or to praise Trevor's latest scheme. This dynamic continued into my college years. I worked hard and won a partial scholarship to Penn State, but still needed my parents' help with tuition. They had set up college funds for both Trevor and me when we were born, so I assumed that wouldn't be an issue. Trevor, however, dropped out of community college after 1 semester to find himself, which apparently meant starting a series of failed businesses that my parents enthusiastically funded. First came a sports memorabilia shop that closed within 6 months, then a food truck venture that never even launched. Each failure was met not with accountability, but with more money and encouragement. "He's an entrepreneur," my father would boast to friends. "He's just finding his path." Last month, I graduated with honors in psychology. My parents attended the ceremony but left immediately after, claiming they had an important dinner reservation. They didn't even take a photo with me in my cap and gown. That night, alone in my apartment, I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to create boundaries. I was going to move to Philadelphia for a job opportunity and start fresh, limiting my contact with my toxic family. The next day, I drove home to tell them my plans. That's when I discovered the betrayal that would be the breaking point. "We need to talk about my college fund," I said, sitting at our kitchen island. "There should be money left that I can use for my security deposit and moving expenses." My parents exchanged glances. About that, my father began, suddenly fascinated by his coffee mug. "There have been some adjustments to the account." "Adjustments," I repeated. "We had to make an executive decision," my mother said coldly. "Trevor needed capital for his new business venture. It's a real estate opportunity that's going to be huge." My stomach dropped. "How much did you give him?" Another exchange of glances. "All of it," my father finally admitted. "Plus, we took out some additional loans in your name for the rest of the investment. We were going to tell you, but the opportunity came up suddenly." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You emptied my college fund and put me in debt without my knowledge or consent. That's illegal. Don't be so dramatic, my mother snapped. We're your parents. We know what's best. Trevor's business will pay off and then everyone wins. And what about me? What about my plans? My voice was rising now. Years of suppressed anger finally finding an outlet. You've always been selfish, my mother said, her voice dropping to that dangerous quiet tone she used when truly angry. After everything we've done for you, what exactly have you done for me? I shot back. You've consistently favored Trevor, belittled my achievements, and now you've stolen from me and put me in debt. You're pathetic, my mother hissed, standing up, always playing the victim. Maybe if you'd shown more initiative like your brother instead of hiding behind books, we would have invested in your future instead. That's when Trevor walked in, keys to his new luxury car jingling in his hand. What's going on? He asked, though his smirk suggested he already knew. Your sister is having one of her tantrums about money, my mother said. I turned to face my brother. Did you know they emptied my college fund for your latest scam? It's not a scam, he said defensively. It's a legitimate investment opportunity. Not that you'd understand business. I understand fraud, I countered. And that's exactly what this is. Enough, my father shouted. Ashlie, you need to calm down and be reasonable. Reasonable? I laughed bitterly. You want me to be reasonable about theft and identity fraud? I should go to the police. My mother's face hardened. You wouldn't dare. Watch me, I said, grabbing my purse and heading for the door. Little did I know that this confrontation would set in motion events that would change my life forever. I stormed out of the house, tears blurring my vision as I headed toward my car. The evening air was cool against my flushed face, and I could hear raised voices continuing inside. Just as I reached for my car door handle, I heard the front door slam and quick footsteps behind me. Ashlie, wait. Trevor called out. I turned to see him approaching, his face a mask of anger, and something else I couldn't quite place. Fear, maybe. There's nothing to discuss, I said firmly. What you and our parents did is illegal, and I'm not going to let it slide this time. You're not going to the police, he said, his voice lower now as he stepped closer. Do you have any idea what that would do to this family? To Dad's reputation? To Mom's business? Maybe you should have thought about that before stealing from me, I replied, turning back to my car. I'm not letting you ruin everything, Trevor growled, and I heard his car keys jingle as he pulled them from his pocket. I glanced over my shoulder to see him jogging toward his black Audi parked in the circular driveway. A sick feeling formed in my stomach. What was he doing? I hurried to get into my car, fumbling with the keys as I heard his engine roar to life. By the time I had my door open, Trevor had reversed out of the driveway and was now facing directly toward me, engine revving. Trevor, what are you doing? I shouted. Our eyes locked through his windshield. His expression was cold, determined. I'd seen that look before when we were kids, and he was about to do something particularly cruel. My heart raced as I realized what was about to happen. I tried to jump out of the way, but it was too late. The last thing I remember was the squeal of tires, the bright headlights blinding me, and the sickening impact as 2 tons of metal slammed into my body. I was thrown onto the hood, then off to the side as he braked suddenly. My head hit the pavement, and through a haze of pain and encroaching darkness, I heard car doors opening and frantic voices. Trevor, what have you done? My father's panicked voice. It was an accident, Trevor shouted, but there was no conviction in his voice. She jumped right in front of me. Is she breathing? My mother now, her voice strangely detached. We need to call an ambulance, my father said. Wait, my mother again. Think about this. If this gets out. The darkness took me then, those final words echoing in my fading consciousness. I don't know how long I was unconscious. When I finally opened my eyes, I was greeted by the steady beep of a heart monitor and the sterile white ceiling of a hospital room. My entire body felt like one massive bruise, and I couldn't move my legs. Panic surged through me as I tried to piece together what had happened. A nurse rushed in when my heart rate monitor started beeping faster. Easy now, she said. her kind face coming into view. "You're safe. You're at Westbrook General Hospital." My legs, I whispered, my throat raw and painful. "Both broken," she confirmed, adjusting something on my IV. "Along with 3 ribs, your right wrist, and some internal bleeding. But you're stable now. You've been unconscious for 4 days." 4 days, my family, I managed to say. "Do they know I'm here?" A strange expression crossed the nurse's face. "That's the thing, honey. We don't know who you are. You had no ID when you were brought in. A motorist found you on Palmer Road and called 911. You were listed as Jane Doe until now." The information hit me like another car. Palmer Road was nearly 2 miles from my parents' house. Had Trevor dumped me there to make it look like a hit and run by a stranger? "I'm Ashlie Collins," I told her. "My parents are Richard and Laura Collins. They live on Oakwood Drive." The nurse, whose name tag read Jenna, wrote this down. "We'll contact them right away. They must be worried sick." "Wait," I said, a sudden clarity cutting through my pain. "Who reported me missing?" Jenna looked confused. "I don't know that anyone has. Should they have?" I tried to make sense of this. If my family knew I was injured, why wouldn't they be looking for me at hospitals? Unless... "Can you wait on contacting them?" I asked. "Just until I talk to the police. I think my brother did this to me." Jenna's expression changed from confusion to concern. "I'll get the doctor and we can call the police right away." 2 hours later, I was speaking with Detective Marcus Collins, no relation despite the shared surname. He was a tall man with kind eyes that contrasted with his otherwise stern appearance. "Let me get this straight," he said after I explained what happened. "You believe your brother intentionally hit you with his car after an argument about money?" "I know he did," I insisted. "We made direct eye contact before he accelerated." Detective Collins made notes. "And you say this was 4 nights ago, but no one has reported you missing or come looking for you." "That's what's scaring me," I admitted. "Let me check something," he said, pulling out his phone. After a few minutes of scrolling, his expression darkened. "Miss Collins, are you active on social media?" "Yes, I have Facebook and Instagram." "Why?" He turned his phone to show me a Facebook post from my mother's account, dated 3 days ago. "With heavy hearts, Richard and I must share that our daughter Ashlie has chosen to leave home after a family disagreement. We've tried to reach her without success and respect her desire for space. We love you, Ashlie, and our door is always open when you're ready to talk." The post had dozens of sympathetic comments. My hands shook as Detective Collins scrolled to show me more. My brother had posted too. "Sometimes people need to find their own path. Wishing my little sis the best wherever she's headed. Call us when you can." The betrayal cut deeper than any of my physical wounds. They hadn't just failed to look for me in hospitals. They had actively created a false narrative that I had run away. "I need to look into this further," Detective Collins said, his voice gentle but determined. "But first, your safety is my priority. Given what you've told me, I don't think we should inform your family of your whereabouts just yet." I nodded, feeling suddenly exhausted. "Thank you." Just as Detective Collins was leaving, a commotion in the hallway caught our attention. A woman's voice, familiar and insistent, was getting closer. "I'm telling you, that's my former student. I saw her picture on your unidentified patients board at the entrance." A moment later, my high school English teacher, Mrs. Bennett, burst into the room, followed by an exasperated nurse. Her eyes widened when she saw me. "Ashlie. Oh my God, it is you. They said you ran away. And that's how, after being invisible to the world for 4 days, I was finally found, not by the family who should have been searching for me, but by a teacher who recognized my face on a hospital bulletin board." The pieces were starting to fall into place, and the picture they formed was darker than anything I could have imagined. The next 3 weeks in the hospital were a blur of pain, police interviews, and slow, agonizing recovery. My injuries were severe. Both legs broken in multiple places, requiring surgical intervention, 3 fractured ribs that made every breath painful. A broken right wrist, and internal bleeding that had nearly killed me before emergency. Surgery. The doctors told me I was lucky to be alive. But lying in that hospital bed, unable to move without assistance, betrayed by my own family, lucky wasn't exactly how I felt. Nurse Jenna became my constant companion and advocate. She extended her shifts to check on me, brought me small treats from the cafeteria, and sat with me during the darkest moments when the physical pain mingled with the emotional trauma, creating a perfect storm of agony. "I just don't understand," I told her one night as she helped adjust my position to prevent bed sores. "How could they do this? We're family." "Some people don't deserve that title," Jenna said, simply her experienced hands gentle as she checked my bandages. "Family is supposed to protect you, not harm you." Detective Collins visited regularly, bringing updates on his investigation. He'd been discreet, gathering information without alerting my family to my whereabouts. "Your parents filed a missing persons report 2 days after your teacher identified you," he explained during one visit. "But it's strange. They explicitly told the responding officers not to check hospitals because they were certain you had left town voluntarily. They provided bus station security footage of a woman they claimed was you boarding a bus to Boston." "That's impossible," I said. "I never went to any bus station." "I know," Detective Collins confirmed. "The woman in the footage doesn't look much like you beyond having similar hair color. It's suspicious, to say the least." As my physical strength gradually returned, I became more determined to understand the full extent of my family's betrayal. With Jenna's help, I gained access to a tablet and began exploring social media news reports and any information I could find about my family's activities since my disappearance. What I discovered was chilling. My parents had crafted an elaborate narrative their headstrong daughter had run away after a disagreement about her post-graduation plans. They expressed concern publicly but framed it as respecting my need for space. Meanwhile, Trevor had suddenly relocated to our uncle's property in Colorado for a business opportunity, conveniently removing himself from the area just days after the accident. But the digital trail revealed inconsistencies. Friends commented on the strange timing of my departure right after graduation. Former classmates expressed surprise that I hadn't said goodbye to anyone. A few even questioned why I wasn't responding to texts or calls. My parents managed these questions with practiced ease. Ashlie has always been independent. She mentioned wanting a fresh start. We're giving her the space she requested. One afternoon, Stephanie, my closest friend since middle school, called the hospital after getting a tip from Mrs. Bennett. "Ash, what the hell is going on?" Her familiar voice broke as soon as I answered. "Your mom told me you left town after some big fight. I've been texting you for weeks." I explained everything, my voice shaking with emotion and lingering pain. Stephanie listened in horrified silence. "I'm coming to see you right now," she insisted. And 2 hours later, she was at my bedside, tears streaming down her face as she took in my injured state. "I should have known something was wrong," she said carefully, hugging me around my various casts and bandages. "It made no sense that you'd leave without telling me." "There's something else you should know," Stephanie added hesitantly. "Your parents emptied your apartment last week. They told your landlord you had broken your lease to move out of state. They took everything, Ash." This news hit me hard. Not only had they abandoned me and lied about my disappearance, but they had also systematically erased my existence, removing my belongings from what had been my home. It was as if they were trying to make their lie become truth. Detective Collins brought more disturbing news the following day. "We've been monitoring your financial accounts as part of the investigation," he explained, his expression grim. "Shortly after your accident, your bank accounts were emptied. The withdrawal was made in person using your ID." "That's impossible," I said. "My wallet was in my purse when Trevor hit me." "Exactly," Detective Collins nodded. "We believe someone used your ID to access your accounts. Additionally, your credit cards have shown activity purchases in Boston, aligning with their story about where you supposedly went." The picture becoming clearer was more disturbing than I could have imagined. This wasn't just a momentary panic and cover-up after the accident. This was calculated, ongoing fraud and deception. But the most shocking revelation came from Jennifer, a hospital administrative assistant who had been helping Detective Collins with medical records. I found something concerning. She told us one morning, her voice low, as if afraid of being overheard. "Someone tried to access information about your condition using your social security number last week. When that failed, they tried to. Well, there's no easy way to say this. They inquired about the process for obtaining a death certificate. A death certificate, I repeated, my blood running cold. But I'm not dead. That's just it, Jennifer continued. They weren't claiming you were currently deceased. They were gathering information about how to file once you were gone. Detective Collins immediately intensified the investigation. Within days, he discovered that my parents had taken out a substantial life insurance policy on me just before my college graduation, a policy that would pay out triple if my death was accidental. This goes beyond covering up your brother's actions, Detective Collins explained. I believe they saw an opportunity in this tragedy. If you were declared dead from an unidentified hit and run, they stood to collect a significant sum. The realization that my family might actually be waiting for me to die hit me with a force greater than Trevor's car. These people, my own blood, had not only abandoned me after I was injured, but might actively be hoping for my death to benefit financially. That night, after everyone had left and the hospital had grown quiet, I lay awake staring at the ceiling tiles, counting them over and over as I tried to process this new reality. The physical pain of my injuries seemed almost secondary to the soul-crushing weight of this betrayal. But something shifted inside me during those long, dark hours. The shock and grief began to crystallize into something harder, more focused. Determination. Resolve. They thought they had left me for dead, erased my existence, and were waiting to profit from my demise. They had no idea that I was not only alive but remembering everything. And now I had one driving purpose: to recover, to gather evidence, and to make sure they faced consequences for what they had done. By morning, I had made a decision. I told Detective Collins and Jenna my plan. Officially, I would remain missing while I recovered. No one outside our trusted circle would know I was alive and conscious. Meanwhile, we would gather evidence, document everything, and prepare for the moment when I would reveal the truth. They think they've written me out of existence, I told Detective Collins. They have no idea that I'm writing their ending instead. Physical therapy was excruciating. Every attempt to bend my healing legs sent spasms of pain shooting through my body. Sweat poured down my face as I gripped the parallel bars, willing my trembling limbs to support even a fraction of my weight. "You're doing great, Ashlie, my physical therapist," Dave encouraged. "Just a few more steps." My arms shook with the effort of holding myself up as my legs struggled to relearn their purpose. The pain was almost overwhelming. But I had one thought keeping me going: the look on my family's faces when I walked into a room they never expected to see me in again. 6 weeks after the accident, I was finally discharged from the hospital. Since my apartment was gone and I couldn't risk being seen by anyone who might inform my family, Jenna offered her spare bedroom. "It's not much," she apologized as she helped me navigate the 3 steps up to her modest duplex. "But it's safe." "It's perfect," I assured her, still using a walker but determined to manage those steps independently. My new temporary home became the headquarters for what Detective Collins had dubbed Operation Phoenix, named for my rising from the ashes of my family's betrayal. The spare bedroom walls soon filled with timelines, documents, and evidence as we built our case methodically. Detective Collins brought updates almost daily. "We've confirmed Trevor's car had damage consistent with hitting a pedestrian," he reported one afternoon. "They had it repaired at a shop 2 counties over, paid in cash." The shop owner remembered them being in a hurry, paying extra for expedited work. Stephanie became our eyes and ears in the community, carefully gathering information without raising suspicion. "Your parents are telling everyone you've been sending them occasional texts," she informed me during one of her visits. "They show people these messages supposedly from you talking about how you're traveling and finding yourself. They even have photos they claim you sent from Boston and New York. Photos of who?" I asked, bewildered. "They're distant shots of someone with your hair color," Stephanie explained. "From behind, or at an angle where you can't clearly see the face. It's creepy how much effort they're putting into this lie." My most valuable ally turned out to be Mrs. Bennett, my former English teacher. As a respected member of the community who had known my family for years, she could ask questions without seeming suspicious. "Your mother hosted the garden club yesterday," she reported during one of her visits. "She had this whole tearful moment about how she's respecting your journey, but hopes you'll come home soon." The performance was quite convincing. I almost believed her myself, and I know the truth. But the most disturbing discovery came from Stephanie's continued monitoring of social media. Ash, you need to see this, she said one evening, showing me her phone. It was a post from my mother announcing a family reunion at our home to celebrate Trevor's new business venture. We're so proud of Trevor's entrepreneurial spirit, the post read. Family is coming from all over to celebrate his success. The only cloud on our happiness is Ashley's continued absence. We miss her and hope she'll reach out soon. Reading between the lines, I realized what this meant. The business venture was undoubtedly the one funded with my stolen money. They were gathering the extended family to celebrate their success, while I was presumed gone, potentially permanently. That's it, I said. A plan, crystallizing in my mind. That's when I'll make my return. The next 3 weeks were devoted to intensive preparation. I pushed myself in physical therapy until I could walk without assistance. Though still with a noticeable limp, Detective Collins helped me organize all the evidence we had gathered. My complete medical records documenting injuries consistent with being struck by a vehicle. Statements from the motorist, who found me miles from where the Powtis accident occurred. Photos of Trevor's hastily repaired car. Financial records showing the emptying of my accounts using my stolen ID. Documentation of the life insurance policy taken out just before my disappearance. The falsified missing person report, with explicit instructions not to check hospitals. Most damning of all was a recorded phone conversation between Trevor and my cousin Alex, obtained legally through Alex's cooperation after Stephanie had confided in him. In the call, Trevor sounded panicked, asking if anyone was asking questions about Ashlie, and emphasizing that what happened that night was an accident. But no one would understand. The final piece came when Detective Collins discovered that my parents had begun the process of declaring me legally dead, an action that normally takes 7 years but can be expedited in cases of presumed fatal accidents. They're not even waiting the customary time, Detective Collins explained, disgust evident in his voice. They're pushing for an exception based on evidence that you were likely a victim of foul play after running away. The irony would be almost impressive if it weren't so evil. As the day of the family reunion approached, we finalized our strategy. Detective Collins would wait nearby with officers and warrants ready to act once I had publicly exposed the truth. Stephanie would drive me to the house and wait outside as backup. Mrs. Bennett and Jenna would be on standby for additional support. The night before, I stood in front of Jenna's bathroom mirror, hardly recognizing the woman staring back at me. I had lost weight during my hospital stay, and my face still carried fading bruises. My formerly long hair had been cut to shoulder length during my hospital stay for easier care. But the most significant change was in my eyes. They held a hardness, a resolve that hadn't been there before. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Jenna asked, standing in the doorway. "We could just let the police handle it. You don't have to face them yourself." I thought about it for a moment, then shook my head. They looked me in the eyes and left me for dead. They erased me, stole from me, and lied about me. The least they can do is look me in the eyes again when their lies crumble. That night I slept surprisingly well for someone about to confront her would-be murderers. Perhaps it was because, for the first time since the accident, I wasn't a victim waiting to be found. I was a survivor preparing to reclaim my story. The morning of the reunion, Stephanie picked me up in her blue Subaru. "Ready for this?" she asked, as I carefully settled into the passenger seat. I took a deep breath, clutching a folder containing copies of all our evidence. "I've been ready since the moment I woke up in that hospital." As we drove toward my childhood home, I watched the familiar neighborhoods pass by. It felt like years rather than months since I had last seen these streets. So much had changed, most of all me. "We're here for you," Stephanie said as we parked down the street from my parents' house. "Detective Collins is 2 blocks away. One text, and he'll be here with the cavalry." I nodded, checking my phone one last time. "Tell him to give me 15 minutes to confront them before coming in. I want them to have time to dig their own graves with their reactions." The walk up the familiar driveway felt surreal. Through the large bay windows, I could see the gathering in full swing. Aunts, uncles, cousins, family, friends, all mingling and laughing, completely unaware of the truth. My mother stood in the center of it all, perfectly coiffed and smiling, as she accepted compliments on her hosting. My father was at the bar pouring drinks and playing the generous patriarch, and there was Trevor looking nervous, but accepting congratulations on his business success. Success built on my stolen future. I stood at the front door, my heart pounding. This was the moment when everything would change. Taking a deep breath, I reached for the doorbell and pressed it firmly. The chime echoed inside, and I steeled myself for what was about to unfold. The door swung open to reveal my Aunt Diane, my mother's younger sister, holding a glass of white wine. Her welcoming smile froze eyes widening in shock as she processed who stood before her. "Ashlie," she whispered, the wine sloshing dangerously close to the rim of her glass. "Oh my God." "Hello, Aunt Diane," I said, surprised at how steady my voice sounded despite my racing heart. "I heard there was a family gathering. I thought I should come home." Her hand flew to her mouth. "But they said you were." She couldn't finish the sentence, her eyes darting over my shoulder, as if expecting to see someone else with me. "Gone," I supplied. That's what they wanted everyone to believe. Without waiting for her response, I stepped past her into the entryway. The familiar scent of my mother's signature lemon verbena candles filled the air, mixed with the aroma of catered food. From the living room came the sound of cheerful conversation and clinking glasses. I made my way toward the gathering, each step deliberate despite my lingering limp. Aunt Diane hurried after me, still speechless. When I appeared in the archway leading to the living room, the effect was immediate and dramatic. Conversations halted mid-sentence. Someone gasped audibly. My cousin Amy dropped a plate of hors d'oeuvres, the ceramic shattering on the hardwood floor. My mother stood frozen by the fireplace, her immaculately made-up face draining of color. My father across the room dropped the drink he was mixing, amber liquid splashing onto his polished shoes. "Ashlie." My grandmother broke the silence, half rising from her seat, her weathered hand clutching her chest. "Is that really you, child?" "It's me, Grandma," I confirmed, forcing a small smile for her sake. She at least deserved kindness. The room erupted in confused exclamations and questions, but I kept my eyes fixed on my parents, who remained rooted in place, horror etched across their features. "Sorry I'm late to the party," I said loud enough to cut through the commotion. "I would have been here sooner, but I was in the hospital for 6 weeks. A hush fell over the room again as everyone processed this information. "Hospital," my Uncle Robert repeated. "What happened? Why don't you ask them?" I suggested, gesturing toward my parents. "Or, better yet, ask Trevor." "Oh, wait. Where is the guest of honor?" As if summoned by his name, Trevor appeared from the kitchen, a beer in hand. He stopped dead when he saw me, the bottle slipping from his fingers and thudding onto the carpet. "This is impossible," he muttered, his face ashen. "You can't be here." "Surprise," I said flatly. "I'm not dead." The word "dead" sent another shockwave through the room. Relatives looked between me and my parents, confusion evident on their faces. My mother was the first to recover her composure. She plastered on a brittle smile and stepped forward, arms outstretched, as if to embrace me. "Ashlie, darling, what a wonderful surprise. We've been so worried about you." I stepped back, avoiding her touch. "Don't I warned? Don't pretend you didn't know exactly where I was and what happened to me." My father cleared his throat, adopting a concerned expression. "Sweetheart, we've been looking everywhere for you. We filed a missing persons report. If you were in the hospital, why didn't you call us?" The audacity of their performance fueled my resolve. I opened the folder I'd been clutching and removed a stack of photos, medical images documenting my injuries. "These are my injuries from the night Trevor hit me with his car," I announced, placing them on the coffee table where everyone could see. 2 broken legs, 3 fractured ribs, a broken wrist, and internal bleeding that nearly killed me. Gasps and murmurs spread through the room as relatives leaned in to see the horrific images. "That's absurd," my mother scoffed, though her voice wavered slightly. "Trevor would never." We made eye contact before he accelerated. I cut her off. "After I confronted all of you about stealing my college fund and taking out loans in my name." My grandfather stood up, his normally gentle face hardened with anger. Is this true? He demanded, looking directly at Trevor. Trevor's face contorted panic, evident in his darting eyes. She's lying. I never hit her with my car. She ran away after we had a fight. She's making this up for attention. Really? I withdrew more documents from my folder. Then, why did you have your car repaired for front-end damage consistent with hitting a person? I have the repair shop records right here. And why I continued pulling out more papers. Did you tell everyone I ran away when I was actually found unconscious by a passing motorist and taken to Westbrook General Hospital as an unidentified patient? The room had grown deathly quiet, all eyes moving between me and my increasingly cornered family members. My mother attempted another strategy. Ashlie has always been troubled, she said, addressing the room with a concerned expression. She's clearly confused about what happened. Perhaps a head injury. Stop it, Laura. The sharp voice belonged to my Aunt Jane, my father's sister. She had been standing quietly near the back of the room, her face growing increasingly troubled as she listened. All heads turned toward her. What do you know about this, Jane? My grandmother asked, her voice trembling. Aunt Jane stepped forward, her hands twisting anxiously. I wasn't going to say anything. I promised Richard I wouldn't. My father's face darkened. Jane, don't do this. She ignored him, fixing her gaze on me instead. I'm so sorry, Ashlie. I should have done something sooner. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. You knew, I whispered. You knew what happened to me. She nodded, tears welling in her eyes. Richard called me that night. He said there had been an accident that Trevor had hit you with his car during an argument. He said you were hurt but breathing when they found you, and they had called an ambulance but couldn't stay because of how it would look. The room erupted again, voices raised in shock and outrage. They left her there. My grandfather thundered, turning to face my father. Your own daughter. It wasn't like that, my father protested weakly. We made sure help was coming. We couldn't let Trevor's future be ruined by one mistake. One mistake, I repeated incredulously. He tried to kill me. And you not only covered it up, but you created this elaborate lie about me running away. You emptied my bank accounts. You took my things from my apartment. One. You filed to have me declared legally dead. This final accusation silenced the room completely. Dead, my grandmother whispered, clutching her chest again. You tried to have her declared dead. My mother's carefully maintained facade finally cracked. This is ridiculous. We would never. I have the paperwork right here, I interrupted, pulling out the final document. Expedited request for declaration of presumed death filed 3 weeks ago. By Richard and Laura Collins. I handed it to my grandfather, whose hands shook as he read it. When he looked up, his eyes were filled with a mixture of horror and rage. How could you do this to your own daughter? He demanded, his voice breaking. For what money? The question hung in the air as my relatives began to realize the full extent of what my parents had done. The atmosphere shifted palpably, with people moving away from my parents. And Trevor, creating a physical divide in the room. It was all Laura's idea. Trevor suddenly blurted, his face sweaty with panic. She told me to scare Ashlie with the car, just enough to teach her a lesson about threatening to go to the police. I didn't mean to actually hit her that hard. My mother's head snapped toward him. Shut up, Trevor. But the damage was done. In his attempt to save himself, Trevor had confirmed everything. I felt a strange calm settle over me as I watched my family's careful facade crumble. For years they had controlled the narrative, making me doubt my own worth and place in the family. Now finally, everyone was seeing the truth. I trusted you, I said quietly, addressing my parents directly. Despite everything, some part of me always believed that when it really mattered, you would protect me. I was wrong. My phone buzzed in my pocket, the signal that Detective Collins had given me 15 minutes and was now approaching the house. Right on cue, the doorbell rang. That would be Detective Marcus Collins from the Westbrook Police Department, I announced to the stunned room. With warrants for the arrest of Richard, Laura, and Trevor Collins on charges of attempted murder, fraud, theft, filing false police reports, and insurance fraud. As Aunt Diane moved to answer the door, my mother made one last desperate attempt. "You're making a terrible mistake," she hissed at me, her perfectly manicured hand gripping my arm. "We're your family. After this, you'll have no one." I gently but firmly removed her hand. "You're wrong," I said, glancing around at the shocked and supportive faces of my extended family. "I'm just now finding out who my real family is." The sound of official voices and footsteps approaching the living room signaled that the next phase of this confrontation was about to begin. Detective Collins entered the room with the calm authority of someone accustomed to tense situations. Two uniformed officers flanked him, their expressions professionally neutral despite the charged atmosphere. "Richard, Laura, and Trevor Collins," Detective Collins asked, though it was clear he knew exactly who they were. My father stepped forward, attempting to assert control over the situation. "I'm Richard Collins. What is the meaning of this interruption?" "We're having a family gathering. I have warrants for the arrest of all three of you," Detective Collins stated, nodding to the officers who moved forward with handcuffs. "The charges include attempted murder, insurance, fraud, identity theft, filing false police reports, and obstruction of justice." "This is ridiculous," my mother protested, her voice rising an octave. "You can't possibly have evidence for these absurd accusations." "On the contrary, Mrs. Collins," Detective Collins replied evenly. "We have substantial evidence, much of it provided by your daughter Ashlie, who you left for dead, and then attempted to have legally declared deceased for financial gain." As the officers began reading them their rights, Trevor's composure completely collapsed. "I didn't want to do it," he shouted, tears streaming down his face. "Mom said Ashlie was going to ruin everything by going to the police about the money. She said I just needed to scare her, make her understand what was at stake." The room collectively gasped at this outburst. My mother's face contorted with rage. "Shut up, you idiot," she hissed at Trevor. "Mom told me to wait until Ashlie went to her car." Trevor continued, words tumbling out in a desperate confession. "She said, just drive close enough to frighten her. But I was angry too, and I hit the gas too hard. When I saw her go down, I panicked." "Trevor Collins, you have the right to remain silent." One of the officers intervened, continuing with the Miranda warning as he secured the handcuffs. My father, always calculating, adopted a different strategy. "There's clearly been a terrible misunderstanding," he said smoothly. "We were in shock after the accident. We made poor decisions in the moment, but there was never any intent to harm Ashlie. We can work this out as a family, without the need for arrests and public embarrassment." "The time for working it out passed when you left me on the side of the road," I said quietly. Detective Collins nodded to me before turning back to my father. "Mr. Collins, we have evidence that goes well beyond poor decisions made in the moment. Your systematic efforts to conceal the crime, financially exploit your daughter, and ultimately benefit from her presumed death constitute premeditated criminal behavior." As the officers led my brother toward the door, he looked back at me, his expression a mixture of fear and something that might have been regret. "Ashlie, I'm sorry," he said, his voice breaking. "I never meant for it to go this far. You have to believe me." I met his gaze steadily. "I believe that you're sorry you got caught, Trevor. That's all." My mother, being led out behind him, abandoned all pretense of composure. "After everything we've done for you," she spat, her face twisted with hatred, "this is how you repay us. By destroying your family." "You stopped being my family the moment you chose to leave me for dead," I replied calmly, surprising myself with my steadiness. "You did this to yourselves." My father, ever the pragmatist even in crisis, tried one last angle as he was escorted past me. "Think about what you're doing, Ashlie. Once this becomes public, there's no going back. Our reputation, your reputation, everything will be ruined. I'd rather have the truth than a reputation built on lies," I said firmly. As they were led from the house, the remaining family members stood in shocked silence. Then my grandmother crossed the room and enveloped me in a gentle hug, mindful of my still healing injuries. "My brave girl," she whispered, tears streaming down her weathered cheeks. "I had no idea. All this time we thought." "It's not your fault, Grandma," I assured her. They were very convincing. My grandfather joined us, his hand trembling slightly as he placed it on my shoulder. We should have questioned more, he said, his voice thick with emotion. The story never quite made sense, but we trusted them. One by one, aunts, uncles, and cousins approached, offering hugs, apologies, and expressions of horror at what had been done to me. Even distant relatives I barely knew seemed genuinely shaken by the revelation. Aunt Jane hung back her face etched with guilt. When the initial commotion subsided, she approached me hesitantly. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she said quietly. "I knew something was terribly wrong, but I convinced myself it wasn't my place to interfere. I told myself Richard would do the right thing eventually." I studied her face, seeing genuine remorse. "Why did they call you that night?" I asked. "Of all people," she sighed heavily. "Because I've covered for them before. Nothing like this, but small things over the years. The favoritism toward Trevor. The financial irregularities. I always made excuses for them, especially for my brother. I thought family loyalty meant protecting them. But I was wrong. Real loyalty would have been protecting you." Her honesty was unexpected and oddly healing. "Thank you for telling the truth today," I said. It mattered. After the police had gone, taking my parents and brother with them, Detective Collins remained behind to answer the family's questions. He explained the investigation process, the evidence collected, and what would likely happen next. "The case against them is strong," he assured my grandparents. "Multiple charges with substantial documentation. This isn't a situation where they can simply buy their way out." Stephanie, who had come inside when she saw the police arrive, stood supportively by my side throughout. As the adrenaline of the confrontation began to fade, I felt the familiar pain in my legs intensifying. "You need to sit down," she murmured, noticing my discomfort. As I settled onto the couch, the same one I'd been forbidden to sit on as a child because it was for guests only, I was struck by the surreal quality of the moment. This house, once a place of constant tension and conditional acceptance, now felt like a museum of lies. Beautiful but hollow, filled with expensive things that had been prioritized over people. My Uncle Robert, always the practical one, addressed the elephant in the room. "What happens now, Ashlie? To the house, the assets, everything?" "I don't know," I admitted. "And honestly, right now, I don't care. I just wanted the truth to come out." Detective Collins, overhearing, joined the conversation. "There will be asset freezes during the investigation, particularly given the financial crimes involved. But regardless of criminal penalties, you have grounds for substantial civil claims, Ashlie. The identity theft, the fraudulent loans, the stolen funds, all of that can be addressed legally." The thought was overwhelming. I had been so focused on surviving then, on exposing the truth, that I hadn't really considered the aftermath. As the gathering shifted from a celebration to an impromptu family council, I found myself watching from a strange emotional distance. These people, many of whom I'd seen only at obligatory holidays and formal events, were suddenly rallying around me with genuine concern. "You'll stay with us, of course," my grandmother declared, "until you're fully recovered and can decide what you want to do next." Actually, I said I have a place to stay. I explained about Jenna, the nurse who had taken me in, and the support system I'd built during my recovery. "Then we'll come to you," my grandmother insisted. "Family helps family heal. The real kind of family, not whatever your parents thought that word meant." As evening fell, the gathering gradually dispersed with promises of support, legal help, and regular visits in the days to come. Detective Collins assured me he would keep me updated on every development in the case. By the time Stephanie drove me back to Jenna's house, exhaustion had set in completely. The emotional and physical toll of the day left me barely able to climb the 3 steps to the front door. Jenna was waiting anxiously. "How did it go?" she asked, helping me to the couch. "They're arrested," I said simply. "All 3 of them. And everyone knows the truth now." "Good," Jenna said, firmly bringing me a glass of water and my evening pain medication. "That's the first step toward justice." As I drifted toward sleep that night, I felt something I hadn't experienced since before the accident. Peace. Not happiness exactly. There was still too much pain and too many unanswered questions for that. But a quiet certainty that I had done what needed to be done, and that whatever came next I would face it on my terms, not theirs. The family that had tried to erase me had instead erased themselves from my future. And somehow, in their absence, I found I could finally breathe freely. The legal proceedings against my family unfolded over the next 8 months. I attended every hearing, sitting straight-backed in the courtroom as the prosecution methodically presented the evidence we had gathered. Each photograph, bank statement, and medical record told a piece of the story that had nearly ended my life. Trevor was the first to accept a plea deal, trading testimony against our parents for a reduced sentence. On the witness stand, he broke down, completely detailing how our mother had orchestrated not just the attempt to frighten me with the car, but the elaborate cover-up afterward. She said we had to protect the family name, he testified, unable to meet my eyes across the courtroom. She said Ashlie was going to ruin everything we'd built by going to the police about the money. After I hit her, Mom said we had to make it look like Ashlie had run away, that we could turn this into an opportunity. My father maintained his composed facade longer, but when faced with the overwhelming evidence and Trevor's testimony, he too agreed to a plea deal. His testimony revealed the cold calculation behind their actions, particularly the life insurance policy and the attempts to have me declared dead. Laura said we needed to recoup the investment, he admitted on the stand, his corporate demeanor finally cracking. The money we'd put into Trevor's business was supposed to be our retirement safety net. With Ashlie threatening to expose the source of those funds and then the accident happening, Laura saw a way to solve both problems at once. My mother was the only one who refused to admit guilt, maintaining her innocence even as the evidence mounted against her. But the jury wasn't convinced by her performance. After a 3-week trial, they returned guilty verdicts on all counts. At the sentencing hearing, I was given the opportunity to deliver a victim impact statement. Standing at the podium, I faced the 3 people who had once been my entire world. I've spent a lot of time thinking about what to say today. I began, my voice steady, despite the emotions churning inside me. I've written and rewritten this statement dozens of times. At first it was all anger and pain. I wanted to hurt you the way you hurt me, but I realized that continuing that cycle wouldn't heal anything. I took a breath, looking directly at each of them in turn. The truth is, you didn't just try to take my life that night. You tried to erase me completely, my past, my presence, and my future. You calculated the value of my existence and found it worth less than money, less than appearances, less than convenience. But here's what I want you to know. I refuse to be erased. Despite everything you did, I'm still here. I'm healing, I'm growing, and I'm building a life that has nothing to do with the toxic foundation you provided. I don't forgive you. Not today, maybe not ever. But I release you. I release the power you had over me, the need for your approval that shaped so much of my life. You are my past, not my future. And whatever sentences are handed down today, my greatest satisfaction is knowing that I am free of you in ways that have nothing to do with prison walls. The judge sentenced my father to 12 years for his role in the crimes. Trevor received 8 years with possibility of parole, after 5 largely due to his cooperation. My mother, as the architect of both the initial plan and the subsequent cover-up, received the harshest sentence, 20 years without possibility of early parole. As they were led from the courtroom, none of them looked back at me. In that moment, I realized the final truth: they had never really seen me at all. The financial aftermath was complicated, but ultimately resolved in my favor. The courts froze all family assets during the investigation, and after the convictions, I was awarded restitution that included the stolen college funds, fraudulent loans taken in my name, and additional damages for the physical and emotional trauma I'd suffered. My grandparents insisted I take ownership of the family home, but I couldn't bear the thought of living in that house of lies. Instead, we sold it, and I used a portion of the proceeds to buy a small, sunny apartment in Philadelphia, close to the counseling center, where I had secured an internship. The physical recovery was slower than I had hoped. A year after the accident, I still walked with a slight limp when tired and certain weather changes sent phantom pains through my once broken bones. But each day brought small improvements, each physical therapy session making me stronger than before. the emotional recovery was more complex. I began seeing a trauma therapist twice weekly, slowly unpacking not just the accident and betrayal, but the lifetime of emotional manipulation that had preceded it. There were dark days when the weight of everything felt crushing, when I questioned whether I would ever feel whole again. But there were beautiful days too. Days when I felt the sun on my face and realized I was happy to be alive. Days when I laughed with Stephanie or Jenna, without the shadow of the past dimming the moment. Days when I helped a client at the counseling center break through to a new understanding and felt the pure satisfaction of using my own pain to help someone else heal. My support network expanded in ways I never could have imagined. My grandparents became regular visitors, making the 2-hour drive to Philadelphia every other weekend, bringing home-cooked meals and decades of wisdom. My cousin Alex, who had helped gather evidence against Trevor, became one of my closest confidants. Aunt Jane, determined to make amends for her silence, helped fund a scholarship for survivors of family violence in my name. Jenna remained a steadfast presence, transitioning from caretaker to friend. She had been there during my lowest moments, had seen me at my most vulnerable, and yet never made me feel weak. "You're the strongest person I know," she told me once. "Not because you weren't broken, but because you let yourself break and then built something better from the pieces." Stephanie, my loyal friend since childhood, was my rock throughout it all. She had put her own life on hold during the worst of my recovery, and now that I was stable, she was pursuing her own dreams with my enthusiastic support. We had grown into a friendship that felt like sisterhood, the family relationship I had always craved but never experienced with Trevor. Detective Collins kept his promise to see the case, through checking in periodically even after the trials concluded. His unwavering belief in my right to justice had been a guiding light during the darkest times. "You know," he told me during our last official meeting in all my years on the force, "I've never seen someone handle this kind of betrayal with the grace you've shown. Most people would have been consumed by it." There were days I almost was, I admitted. But staying angry would mean they still had power over me. I want something better than revenge. I want a life. On the 1-year anniversary of the confrontation at the family gathering, I decided to host a dinner at my new apartment. Not to commemorate the trauma, but to celebrate the connections that had helped me survive it. I invited everyone who had been part of my healing journey. Stephanie, Jenna, my grandparents, Detective Collins, Mrs. Bennett, and the extended family members who had stood by me when the truth emerged. As we gathered around my dining table, mismatched chairs, secondhand dishes but filled with genuine warmth, I looked at these faces that had become my chosen family and felt a sense of completion I had never known in the pristine, cold environment of my childhood home. "I want to thank you all," I said, raising my glass in a toast. "A year ago I thought I had lost everything, but sitting here now, I realize I've gained what I never truly had before: people who love me for exactly who I am, not who they want me to be." My grandmother wiped away a tear. "We're the lucky ones, dear. You've taught us all what real strength looks like." Later that evening, as the gathering shifted to coffee and dessert in my small living room, Stephanie pulled me aside. "I have something for you," she said, handing me a wrapped package. "I've been saving it for the right moment, and this feels like it." Inside was a framed quotation beautifully rendered in calligraphy. "Family isn't always blood. It's the people in your life who want you in theirs. The ones who accept you for who you are. The ones who would do anything to see you smile and who love you no matter what." I traced the words with my finger, feeling their truth resonate through me. "It's perfect," I whispered. "Just like the family you've built," she replied, squeezing my hand. As my guests departed that night with hugs and promises to gather again, soon I stood in the doorway of my apartment, to my space, my sanctuary, and felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over me. The path that had brought me here was marked with unimaginable pain, but it had led me to a place of authentic connection I might never have found otherwise. The family that tried to erase me had instead inadvertently set me free, free to discover who I truly was beyond their expectations and limitations, free to build relationships based on mutual respect rather than obligation and fear, free to help others find their way out of the darkness because I had navigated those shadows myself. I still carried scars, both physical and emotional. There were still questions that might never be fully answered, wounds that might never completely heal. But I had learned that being whole didn't mean being perfect or unbroken. It meant embracing all parts of your story, the beautiful and the painful, and using them to write a new chapter entirely your own. Standing there in the quiet aftermath of laughter and love, I knew with absolute certainty that I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving. And that was the most powerful testimony of all. What would you do if someone you trusted betrayed you so completely? How would you rebuild your life? I hope my story has given you strength if you're facing your own battles, or gratitude if you're blessed with genuine, supportive relationships. Please share your thoughts in the comments. And if this story resonated with you, consider liking, subscribing, and sharing to help others who might be struggling to find their voice. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember, your worth isn't determined by those who fail to see it, but by your courage to keep believing in yourself when others don't.